But you are right.
Right.
I'm a Philistine. I know it. Welcome to Groovy Movies. My name is Lily Austin.
And my name's James Brailsford. Hello.
Hello. How are you, James?
I'm pretty good, thanks. I was just celebrating my birthday recently and had a little cinema
I know,
excursion.
I was there. Well, I was there a little early.
Oh, yes. So you were. Sorry. It's very confusing when we mostly conduct our relationship in virtual world that, yes, you do sometimes punch through into the real world, Lily.
I know, and it honestly felt a bit surreal seeing you in person without a screen between us.
Yeah, and it was a genuine surprise. I was saying to Maria, who organised it, like, don't often get genuine surprises these days, so you absolutely nailed it. So it was a delight to see you both, yourself and Emily, friend of the show, Emily. Hello.
Yes, and actually this is serving as a trailer for our next episode because we decided to watch together. We wanted to go to cinema, of course, but there was nothing good on. Mickey 17 was out, but we'd all seen it separately, so that wasn't going to work. So instead, we decided to watch.
There was the closest we got, just to tease before what we did watch, was the closest we came up with was perhaps Erin Brockovich.
Yes, there was a re-release,
25-year anniversary re-release,
which I was really keen on, but it's not really. I have to say, it's probably not like really James's thing, like a kind of realist. It's not. It's quite nicely filmed. But
also time and it's a Steven Soderbergh film. I'm a big fan of Steven Soderbergh, but there's a time and a place. It just didn't quite feel. We'd had a couple of beers as well, and I just didn't feel like we were quite in the right frame of mind to appreciate Erin Brockovich.
So instead, James, what did we opt for?
Well, I just thought, okay, you asked me what you want to watch, and the first genre that came to my head was like 90s like sex thrillers. So we went for Fatal Attraction, which I've never seen before. So
whereas I have seen it, I realised while I'm watching it, I think at least 4 times. It's a classic. I'm obsessed with it. I'm obsessed with Madame Butterfly, the opera. Well, in theory, I've never actually seen it, but just the merging of these genres. Perfection. So we're going to talk about it next week. We're teasing that for you. You know, we did Baby Girl a few weeks ago. That was a bit of an ode to that genre, that time.
Yes, definitely was tipping its hat to that type of film.
Exactly. So we'll be going back to that then. But in the week since...
Tipping its hat, or was it cracking the whip? Anyway, sorry.
Cracking the whip. Yeah, that's good. I like a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Okay, so then in the week after, James, what did you do for your birthday?
Yes, well, this time, I like to mix things up a bit. So I've struck up a friendship with somebody who lives a couple of blocks away from me in the same complex of flats. Shout out to Jean there. She's a silver screener, let's say. So they have events at some cinemas where you get a super discounted ticket. If you're a pensioner, you also get a free biscuit and a cup of tea. So I'm always up for looking those events out. And I was looking what was on around my birthday, and I noticed that Singing in the Rain, which is one of my all-time favourite films, was getting screened at the Stockport Plaza. So I mentioned it to Jean. She loves Singing in the Rain, but hadn't seen it in decades. So she was totally up for going. So me and her went, and it was like an 11 a.m. screening on the Wednesday or the Thursday it was of last week. And the Stockport Plaza, for those of you who don't know, look it up, or we should leave a link. It is a beautiful 1930s Art Deco picture palace, and it's perfectly, or I don't know about that perfectly, but it's not been modernised. The outside of the building is 1930s Art Deco. The interior has been maintained, and the thing that they've kept from the very beginning is they have a organist who rises from the floor of the stage up into the theatre itself while playing the organ, and before each show starts, he will play a selection of tunes selected to go with the film that you're about to watch. And then when he's finished, he presses a button, and as he's playing, he descends back down through the floor of the stage.
It's incredible. You sent me a picture, and I'm completely obsessed. It made me reflect on the fact that, there are so many amazing cinemas in London, but it seems to be all the gems, the true gems, are in the north. But I might be wrong about that. Listeners, if you have any other suggestions of cinemas that I can go see that are a bit closer to me in London, please tell me, because I want to have this kind of immersive cinema experience
Absolutely, and like, please send us some recommendations, because you're right, there are a few hidden gems, and there's a bunch that I haven't been to in the north, but I do think there are also a lot scattered around down south. So yeah, bring us suggestions, because after going to the Parkway Barnsley and now the Stockport Plaza, I'm on a bit of a roll. I really enjoyed both experiences. They were both very different things. Like, for example, I wouldn't say the actual projection and the sound quality of Singing in the Rain was that good. In fact, it was a little bit. Even Gene commented on it, but it wasn't really about that. It was about the environment. I know, right? I didn't want to mention it because I didn't want to be a party pooper. But Gene actually mentioned that the keystoning was a bit off. But anyway.
Oh wow, my gosh! See, that's the virtue of going with a silver screener. They'll know about these kinds of technical things.
you can't fob them off. But the important point to note: just because you are going to a silver screen screening, if you don't have the silver screen ticket, which is discounted, so I got the full adult ticket, I also assumed I would be welcome for a cup of tea and a biscuit. You got to pay extra. So Jean very kindly paid £3 for my tea and a biscuit.
We love Jean. I hope we need to. I know that you're working on a couple of projects with Jean. I feel like we must discuss these more on later episodes. But I will just leave that with you guys. I'm going to tease our listeners with that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's evolving. The project's evolving. Yeah.
So on to the main event. So. This week, that little thing.
Oh yeah, that's what I was just enjoying talking about cool old cinemas. Yeah, sorry, yes.
So this week, guys, I mean, this is a very fitting film to watch in a cool old cinema because we are talking about a film from 1954. This is Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai.
A film that I've heard a lot about from almost as long as I can remember being a film fan, but I've never actually seen.
That was why I wanted us to talk about it, because it's one of those films that I think if you're at all interested in film, you'll have probably heard of it. And okay, maybe we're just like horribly illiterate in this area, but I feel like a lot of people haven't seen it. You just know of it.
And I know, Paul Wiseman, if you're listening, I know you've watched it. I know you're a big Kurosawa fan, so you're the one person who has definitely watched it. I get it. So don't say nothing. We know.
And so, yeah, I wanted to talk about it because there is something amazing about watching films that are the genesis of what becomes part of film language. I was reflecting on it as I fell asleep last night. Akira Kurosawa is kind of like film's Shakespeare. You know how Shakespeare invented all of these words and changed the English language forever and made it what it is today. He kind of did that with cinema, right? The language of cinema.
I was watching it and I didn't quite go onto the Shakespeare thing, but I did very quickly from watching it. I was like, he kind of figured it out. He kind of figured out how you make a good film and what's required, and it's like it's all there, and it's 70 years old. And like, you know, the thing that surprised me with the action sequences, even they didn't feel like very like action sequences in films from that era are quite poor. You know, they're not well directed, but even the action sequences in a 70-year-old film, pretty well done.
Yeah.
You know, they kind of hit the spot.
Yeah, totally. Okay, well, let's get into it. So if you don't know, Seven Samurai is set during the 16th century, during Japan's civil wars, and it follows a group of warriors who are assembled to defend a small village from bandits. And so I think you can maybe even deduce from that one of the main things that this film pioneered was kind of a whole genre in itself of like heroes assembling, you know, the Avengers, Ocean's 11, Bugs
Pulling
Life.
a team together.
Exactly, yeah. Pulling a team
Bugs
together.
Life was that?
Yes, Bugs Life. I saw. You know what? That I can't take credit for that. That is like a go-to on the internet when you're looking into this film. It's like Bugs Life is inspired by Seven Samurai. And to be honest, I don't remember the film that well, but there are. I think the thing is, it's not just about assembling a team, but I think the critical thing is that each member of the team is very distinctive, has their own personality, brings their own special something to the group, and will each in turn have some like crucial use and benefit to it. I think there's a real emphasis on individuality on this film, which is quite interesting given that it was made kind of post World War II in Japan. But anyway, let's talk about the kind of basics of this movie. So the budget, one of the things that is... Oh, sorry, did we freeze? It's quite interesting that there's such an emphasis on that because this film was made post-World War... It's a Japanese film made post-World War II.
Oh yeah. I hadn't even contemplated that when I was watching it. Of course, it's right just off the back of the. Okay, yeah, interesting.
Exactly. But let's get into the numbers of it, because this is something that it's also very well known for. Up until that point, and I think for quite a long time after, this was the most expensive Japanese movie ever made. It was made for $500,000, which, okay, that's about 5.9 million in today's money, which doesn't sound like all that much for like big budget films. But the average Japanese movie was about 42,000, to put it in context. So this was like crazy off the scale. But in contrast, it's about on par with the cost of big budget movies in Hollywood at that time. So basically, in a smaller industry, Kurosawa was making a Hollywood movie.
Right. I didn't know the financials of it there. So this was their attempt to kind of compete on the same scale as Hollywood. And it definitely looks like they spent a lot of money on this film. Or I never once. You get totally absorbed into the film. The period setting is great. I assume it looks like they built a real set on location, so it's all very convincing.
They did, yes. Yeah. I would say that it was Kurosawa's intention to make a film on par with Hollywood. It certainly wasn't the studio's, because the original budget he was given was much smaller. This film was made by Toho Studios, and the film kept going. He kept going over the budget, and to the point where production got paused twice because it had gone over budget. And during those times, Kurosawa would just go fishing, apparently, for a couple of months, all chilled, and just relax by a river and think it's fine. They've already put in so much money. They're going to come back and want me to finish this film. The investment's too high. And it worked.
Wow, he played the game.
He played the game. He played the game. But the upshot of that was it did take a year to make.
So, yeah, a very expensive film, and when I opened it up on my BFI player, which is where I watched it, very long film, I was like, oh my God, this is longer than The Brutalist. This is longer than The Brutalist. It hit me hard, that, just purely the duration. Before I'd seen the film, I was like, my head was like black and white film, 3.5 hours. I know it's Akira Kurosawa, so I know it'll be good, but it was challenging, that duration. But it was a delight to see there was an intermission in the middle.
Yes.
So nice, and a perfectly placed, little semi cliffhanger, kind of sets you up for the second half, so you can break it into two, which is good. And just to kind of then wheel back on it, once I started watching the film, wow, perfectly paced, really engaging. It's a really entertaining story. It draws you in. I didn't actually feel the runtime as much as I thought I was going to feel.
I agree. Yes, I also was a bit shook by the runtime. That was a little off-putting. I don't know whether to confess this or not, because I feel like our listeners might not ever take me seriously again and might be put off. But I watched the first hour, and then I had to stop because it was bedtime or whatever. And then I came back to it the next day. I watched another hour, and then I thought, Jesus Christ, there's still another hour and a half to go. And I said to my fiance, I don't know what to do because I need to finish this film, but I really want to watch Lord of the Rings. Let me explain. A friend of mine at work has been reading the books and talking about them, and it just put this movie in my brain. So I was like desperate to watch it. So Leo came up with a solution. Why don't we watch it on double speed? So
okay.
The last hour and a half of Seven Samurai I watched on double speed, and I have to tell you, it works because it's a perfect film. It's a great movie, and you're right, it's super engaging, and there are lots of things that are surprising about it. It's very, very funny. It is, I think, first and foremost a comedy. Well, not first and foremost, but I think it's as much a comedy as it is a melodrama, as it is an action movie. I think that all these genres are kind of equally served. But it is, I think, there's a lot of space to breathe in the film. Part of the reason it's so long is it is not like films today. It is not made for an audience that doesn't have a good attention span, i.e. me. There are, that dialogue is delivered, and then there is a pause. We pull out, maybe we look at the scene, we look at the people. There are pauses, and so
the pacing that Akira Kurosawa spent months and months in the edit suite, you're going, it's too long, too short. Got to get it just right. Sorry, yes, yeah, that.
Actually, no, you're incorrect about that, because one of the other things, the trademark of Kurosawa, is he edited as they filmed. So every night after they'd finished filming, he edited. So no editing suite for months after. He did it as he went. He's he's a genius. But you are right. I'm a Philistine. I know it. But honestly,
well, listen.
It worked. It worked, and it meant I got to watch Lord of the Rings right after, which was an amazing point of comparison. Because again, Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah, getting the gang together.
Getting the gang together, all different personality types, bringing different things. The comedic one, the sort of the calm centre, Gandalf. It worked. It was a great comparison, but, you know, a much more choppy edit, obviously. And it's amazing to watch a movie where all these things kind of began and it's done perfectly. But I feel so ashamed that I admitted that. I'm so sorry, everyone. Don't do as I do. Just watch it in a few chunks, I'd say.
I would say a few chunks. I mean, there is an intermission dead in the middle, so it's like that's a good place. So it's like watching an hour and a half movies-ish. But I will say, Lily, when I saw it was 3.5 minutes, I was like, oh, you know what? I might have to secretly use the old 2x speeder myself, right? However, much to my surprise/dismay, BFI Players app, which I have to say is probably the worst app of any product ever, does not have a goddamn play fast or play slow option. It's just real time, baby. So I had no choice.
Oh my god!
And I didn't mind it.
Yeah, no, it doesn't need it. Like, if you have the time, if you don't have Lord of the Rings in the back of your mind, weighing you down.
Because that was the thing that surprised me watching it was how little time the bandits are in the film, because it's all about protecting these villagers from the bandits. So we assemble a team of 7 kind of different samurai characters, and they all come together. But the vast majority of the film is them training the peasants, is them fortifying the farm, is figuring out strategies, chopping the air into different sectors. Go and check the east sector and the south sector, all this kind of stuff. Like, they're very methodical, and the film takes its time with that, but it's quite engrossing because you get to see the different characters, the samurai more, you get to see the kind of characters of the villagers, you get to see their relationship and them trying to work with these completely they're not fighter farmers, but trying to train them up and all that stuff. So that is what the vast majority of the film is taken up with, and I thought that would be slow, but I loved it because they are interesting characters. I mean, you have Toshiro Mifune, who's like an incredible, one of the biggest actors in Japan at the time, and I mean, Spielberg even cast him in his second or third feature film. But he plays this kind of drunkard, like comic character, and he's hilarious, and he's like one of the better comic relief parts, isn't it?
And yeah, he collaborated with Kurosawa, I think, on 15 films during Kurosawa's career. And actually, when they originally were coming up with the story, it kind of went on a bit of an evolution, because Kurosawa's original idea was it was going to be the day in the life of one samurai, which is interesting because actually I read that Kurosawa's father came from a samurai family. So a bit of a familial link there. He's got some personal insight, I guess. And then as he began thinking about it, he decided actually it would be really, I think he read a newspaper story about something similar happening, about some samurai defending a village. So he had the idea of a group of samurai being kind of assembled by a village. Yeah. And originally it was called Six Samurai. So when Kurosawa and the other screenwriters, they were called Hideo Ogini and Shinobu Hashimoto, they locked themselves away for 6 weeks, didn't allow themselves to be seen by family or friends, and just like bedded in to write this script. By the end, they had this Six Samurai concept, but thought, it's a little bit dry. We need some comic relief, like you said. We need something a little bit looser and wilder to shake up this dynamic. And that's when he decided he would cast Mifune, who he'd worked with so many times, but very much against type. Like, Mifune usually plays a more kind of male lead, a more serious character, basically. And with this, he was like, go crazy, do whatever you want. I want a wild character who's unpredictable. Fill your boots. Yeah,
and he's great at it. He's like he's pantomime comic acting when he's like impersonating the characters. It's great. It's he clearly is having a ball with it. And yeah, and all the way through it, like, is he going to kind of be a wild card who brings them down? Is he going to be a wild card who saves the day? And of course, as the film progresses, it's like of course, it's not one or the other. It's it's a bit of both, unfortunately. And just as just a general observation watching it, which I think is no surprise to anybody who's even knows a little bit about Akira Kurosawa, is how much of an inspiration it was, especially to George Lucas, but also kind of Steven Spielberg. Watching, I mean, the kind of the things I'm going to comment on are quite common throughout Kurosawa's samurai movies. But there's the screen wipes where we have the image wiping from one scene to another, which is all over Star Wars. We've got even look at the design of the samurai. Look at the bandits. They've got the traditional samurai attire, which is Darth Vader's helmet. Even the fact that it's a bunch of plucky rebels defending themselves from a bigger, overpowered evil, all that kind of stuff. It's like, and just the way the camera movement is blocked out, the way that we were talking about how good he is at filmmaking, Kurosawa, how he is Shakespeare, but because he just knows how to move a camera, how to tell a story with three people in one shot, and you can see all their reactions to the same event, but without having to cut to a close-up of them. All those things you look in George Lucas's early work, especially, we're not talking about prequels here, but they've clearly taken inspiration from Akira Kurosawa's work.
Yeah, it's amazing because when you decide to watch a film made in, for example, the 50s, I think I can often assume, in a sense, that it's going to be like some of the very first the first films were made in the 20s and onwards, there's been many years since innovation has happened. But in my mind, it's like, an old black and white film, it's going to be like watching a play. But watching Seven Samurai, it was incredible to see how contemporary it feels because of the filmmaking techniques, which basically, he was establishing. Like, yes, the fact that by using telephoto lenses, we could have different characters in focus, different positions in one shot. And by doing that, you get to see three different characters' story at the same time. They're all thinking different things, and you've been following those characters, so you know what they're going through and what their emotions are, and it moves the plot along for all of them. So it's kind of amazing. And the other thing that was really, to me, felt like, well, actually, this didn't feel like contemporary, but just like notable, was that it's a huge cast because it's following these samurai as they train villagers to defend themselves. There's a big cast there. And there are these incredible shots where the whole of the village, say, is sat together in a circle, or they're all gathered watching people through a window. There's a lot of using the crowd in order to emit an emotion or tell part of the story, or to show an individual do something different in contrast to them. And it's kind of amazing because budgets are slashed so much in films these days. You rarely see, a lot of extras is a rare thing, but this is more than just extras. They're really being directed to do something, to tell the story, to be protagonists in these scenes. And you just don't see that very often these days. And it's really powerful.
Yeah, you're right. It is. They are a cast of characters rather than just generic actors. And you see the same faces popping up throughout. So it's not just like, let's get 100 people in today and a different 100 people the next day. It feels like a genuine village that you go along with the story. Also, I did notice that Toshiro Mifune, there's a sequence where he gets on a horse and he's kind of half drunk acting, but he just rides off on the horse at full pace, and he's like, that was actually him. That started on a close up of him getting on the horse. We didn't switch to a stuntman who then does the actual dangerous bit. Like, the 1950s, health and safety wasn't so much of a big deal back then.
Yes, and not recommended, but a joy to behold.
Great to watch. I mean, because you don't for a minute think, that's not that character doing that. Like, here's this mad maverick character who seems to be half drunk all the time, and he kind of gets up on this horse, he doesn't give a shit, and off he goes. And not for 1 minute are you taken out of the scene by like, there's Tom Cruise getting on a horse. Well, it would be Tom Cruise doing it, wouldn't it? Sorry. There's any other actor getting on a horse. Then we cut to the other angle from the back of the head, and the hair's a bit different because we all know it's a stunt person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very true. Speaking of that, the only thing I will say that did slightly detract from the film for me was all the bald caps, because 50s bald caps were not strong. You can very much tell there's hair under that. You can tell that bald cap.
And I felt bad because you know what I thought, Lily? I thought, you know what? When if I'd have watched this growing up, like most of the people I knew who'd seen it, they'd have watched it on VHS, right? It would have been an old transfer onto VHS tape, which is very washed out. The quality's terrible. So I bet you wouldn't have even noticed. But now it's had a beautiful 4K restoration, and we watch it on on our HD TVs, it's not helping. I mean, they're not bad for what they are, but you're right. You do notice them. Like, oh shit, you wish you didn't. Why didn't you just shave your hair off? But anyway,
I know, no, I think it does. It's quite distracting. But at least, well, in that first half, I was a little distracted. But then once they were moving faster, because I had them at two and a half, I didn't notice as much. But I want to talk a little bit, just going back to the whole innovation, defining, establishing film language. Another thing, because again, I love these sort of the magic of things not going to plan or what seems like a problem. Because as I've mentioned, the film ended up taking a year to film because of all of these pauses, because of the escalating costs. So it meant that when they came to shoot the final fight scene at the end of the film, it was basically winter and there was torrential rain, which had not been the plan. If they'd stuck to their schedule, they would have been filming in the summer. So they had no choice but to film those scenes in the pouring rain, which, you know, actually added to the scene, made it more intense, made it more dramatic. And as we know, is like a classic technique now in film. You know, we were talking about Seven in a few episodes ago, where most of the film is in the rain, and you know,
rain-drenched.
Exactly, it adds to the mood. And this film was basically the pioneer of that, all because Kurosawa couldn't stick to a schedule, stick to a budget.
Well, I mean, it does look great. I had no idea, but yeah, and then it inspired many films ever since.
The other thing that I read, which I really love, was that, again, I mean, we haven't really talked about it extensively, but Kurosawa pioneering with how he filmed. He had like 3 different cameras, was filming close-ups with his telephoto lens, I think many different shots at once, and he would kind of like draw it out in a diagram to figure it out.
Just to pause there, but I from watching the film, it feels like most of it is what I would call classic single camera. That's why the composition is so good. So maybe what you're describing there is specifically for the action scenes to get coverage, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. There were quite a few, even in the like normal, like there were quite a few moments where there was a close-up. I mean, not loads, but maybe you're right.
But to get those close-ups, that's you kind of move the camera, but then you can relight it to get the close-ups looking really nice. If you shoot multiple cameras to try and get the close-up and the wide shot at the same time, you have to compromise the lighting for one of the cameras, and all that kind of. And in that, I didn't notice any of that stuff. It all looked very nice. So I'm just wondering if maybe he's referring to multiple cameras for the action sequences, that makes more sense. Maybe
you're right. I think I'm doing a classic me and making things up because. Here's
and I'm just not having any of that. Like, whoa, just classic, 1 minute there.
There'd be a classic orthodox shooting position, and then one for quick shots, and then a third kind of guerrilla unit. Apparently, does that make sense?
Okay, so we could. No, that makes sense. As in, he's kind of picking stuff up, so occasionally might get something, but the A camera is king.
Yeah, but he always yeah. But he would do these additional things. All that's to say is he wasn't afraid of a complex shot, which brings me to the story. So he wanted to get a shot of the village from up on the mountain, so he'd kind of see it in the valley in context. And he wanted it to be an evening shot. So the crew spent the entire day setting this up for this one single shot. And then once it was set up, the cameraman, Asakusa Nakai, and Kurosawa had this huge debate about when exactly they should start shooting it so that they would see the sun setting. That was kind of what they were going for. They argued so long that they missed it, the sunset, and they didn't get the shot. That was it.
Classic creative conflict.
Yeah, classic. And I feel like that gives you a hint about why it took a year to film and why they were like, it cost so much money because, very particular, but perhaps not always. It sounded like you needed, a producer on hand to keep everyone to schedule or something.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, but it's interesting because it was the film at the time, it kind of also in its production process was sort of like foreshadowing what was to come in the future, because this whole time the film was being made, because it was taking so long, and by this time Kurosawa was a very well-known, established director in Japan, and actually in the West as well. He was known by this point, but especially in Japan, there was a lot of talk about this film, like what's happening, what are these production issues? It was being reported on all the times in the newspaper. Right. There was lots of rumours about it.
I see.
Kind of reminded me of the recent Snow White movie. and all of the buzz
Who
and
would have thought
drama
this?
about it. I know, you didn't think I'd be bringing that in at this point.
Not at all. Wow, that was well played there, Lily. Yeah. So I didn't realise it was a rumour hit production, which never bodes well usually. For the
Yeah, I was going to
production, if
say,
there's a
but
lot of
unlike
rumours.
with, it seems, Snow White, Seven Samurai, when it came out, was a huge hit.
Maybe in 70 years' time, Snow White will be having an appraisal.
Oh, I hope so. God, honestly, I feel bad for that movie. But when it came out, the studio was very concerned about how the US were going to take the runtime. So they did actually cut 50 minutes from the film that was released in the US. But these days...
5015, sorry.
50.
Which one?
50.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was still a pretty long movie. It's still well over 2 hours. But in the US, they got this shorter version, and it was called The Magnificent Seven, which is the name of the remake you might recognize that was made a few years later.
Right.
But today, the film that you can see is the longer version. They've done a few releases over the years, but I think you mentioned recently a 4K version. So, guys, if you want to see it, you can. Lucky you, see the the full length one.
The full fat version, which I imagine the 50 minutes they took out was probably the bit in the middle where it's just them kind of planning and doing all that kind of stuff, which is where all the charm of the film, where all the characters come to life, you know?
Yeah, I think so. I think when you see the villagers interacting and them dealing with their fears about the samurai and the samurai kind of building relationships with each other, that is really the magic of the film. It's not really that's why I would say it's as much a kind of drama and comedy as it is an action movie, because as you said, the action is really only at the very start and at the end, but most of it is about human relationships, which kind of makes sense because Kurosawa himself has said that when he looks back over his film career, he thinks that the thing he was always been interested in exploring is this question of why can't people be happier together. And I can kind of see that in the film. It's very much about the villagers trying to negotiate. They've got this problem to solve. It's also them working together and work and learning to live with new people. And yeah, very much an exploration of relationships.
And even the samurai, some of the samurai, they're not particularly that happy with the relationship they have with the farmers. They're saying, they always hide things from us, so there's distrust. So it's not like these are these angel samurai who've come to help these. It's a little bit more complicated. But the thing is, this whole middle section, which is the non-action section, it's also what it is doing. It makes you really kind of get invested in the characters, and you just and in my mind, as I was watching, oh my god, we all know some of these aren't going to make it to the end of the film, and I like them all. They've all got their own different traits. I especially loved. I tell you what, the one bit that stuck out was when there's a couple of scouts sent by the bandits to kind of check out what's happening in the village. So that's the first. You've had an hour or so of nothing to do with the bandits. They haven't even been around, but then suddenly these scouts turn up, and Toshiro Mifune's character, he loudly announces, "Oh, what's happening here?" And so he gives the game away that some samurai in the village, so they have to go and track down those two scouts and kill them before they get back to the bandits. And two of them go out, and one of the samurai, he just looks like he's half asleep because he's been observed by the kind of junior trainee kind of samurai character, and he thinks he's nodding off asleep, and then the other guy's in a tree, and then the two scouts turn up and they just suddenly pounce into action. The guy who looked like he was asleep just confronts him. The other guy jumps down from the tree, just takes them out in moments. So even though there's not much action, when it's in, you're really into it. You really it really counts.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are we saying? Let's give it a letterbox review, James. What would you give it out of 5?
Oh, it's easily a 4. Maybe we can debate whether it's a 4.5 or 5, but it's definitely a 4 without hesitation.
Oh my God, only a 4. Oh.
Only a 4, 4.5.
You wouldn't give it
Come
5.
On. I just need a bit of gas in the tank with the 5. I just need to know that I can't just be giving out 5s willy nilly, right?
Oh my God, I mean,
I'm very precious about my 5 stars.
I hear you. I just feel like, I guess because I'm a sort of, I don't know, a history devotee, maybe. And so I just feel like it's such an important film, and you can just, and you can tell watching it, even I was watching it with my friend Almantis, and even, within the first few minutes, he was like, was this one of the first, did this film pioneer the kind of Avenger assemble model. You can see that this film is like doing that. So for me, that alone gives it 5 stars. Like, this is without this film, cinema would be completely different, and I would say poorer. So I got to give it 5 stars. But I guess, yeah, the question is, do you think that the long run time is absolutely necessary, and should films ever be as long as that? And is our discomfort with long run times more about our inability to pay attention and our attention deficit disorders?
Well, no, listen, I think the long run time is part of what makes it so good. I think because, as well, he doesn't waste that run time. Like, there's a lot of films now I think we're all getting exhausted by, which have long run times that are not well paced, that aren't well scripted. This does everything. Like, the bit in the middle, which isn't the action sequence, is very funny, very charming. You get into the character work, so it earns its run time. I mean, I was only a little bit struggling with it when I was a bit tired trying to watch it. When I was watching it rested, I was completely engaged. So that was the main thing, I think, with the run time. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you're talking around. I'm going to feel a bit of a meanie if you've got a 5-star and mine says 4.5. What's my problem? Okay.
No, I'm curious. What is, like, stopping it be 5 stars?
I don't know, Lily. I just feel like, is it a 5-star? I haven't contemplated it hard enough. I feel like 5, I've really got to... I could probably give it a 5.
No, I'm not going to bully you into giving it a 5. It doesn't deserve...
4.5.
You've got to be true to your heart. I will... I just want to say this one, give us this little bit more of trivia, just to, like, make you question that rating even more. So apparently, Kurosawa... in humorously, I can never say it. Posthumously. No, not posthumously. Posthumously. He was named Asian of the Century in the Arts, Literature and Culture category of Asian Week magazine.
And I can't even give him an extra half-star.
For me, I mean, I have to question this notion, Asian of the century. Do we have a European of the century? Who would that be? We'll get into that another time. But I mean, it's charming because it does just show you how important he is. He's one of 5 people, I guess, in different categories who have most prominently contributed to the improvement of Asia in the 20th century. So if that is not a sell for you guys to go watch his movies, I don't know what is. Guys, go see his movies. He's important.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a great director. I mean, I think my favourite, you know what? You know the reason why I'm holding back from 5 stars, Lily? Thank you. Finally, I've got you an answer, right? Is because I think my favourite Kurosawa is Akira, and that's a 5-star all the way. So I just need to give Akira a bit of separation.
That makes sense. And I haven't seen that movie, and I really want to see it because you told me about it, and it sounds amazing. So maybe next series we can do that one.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening to another episode of Groovy Movies.
Thank you very much. And, it always helps out your favourite YouTubers and favourite podcasts if you leave us a like or a review. Helps get their channels and their kind of work out to a bigger audience.
So we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Groovy Movies is produced and edited by us, Lily Austin and James Brailsford. And James also produced the theme music.
Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Groovy Movies Pod, or email us groovymoviespod@gmail.com.
For more information about the films discussed, check out the show notes.